I was once the girl who brought tea and managed calendars. Now I'm the woman who builds homes. This isn't about power, it's about purpose. And I won't be silenced by fear or headlines." The crowd roared. "Hello, bestie. Please stay with me as I unfold this interesting romantic story. If you enjoy the story, please support us by subscribing to this channel and hit the notification button for more. Thank you. Grab your popcorn, sit back, relax, and enjoy this story. Lagos never truly slept. From the honking danfos on the mainland to the glittering towers of Victoria Island, the city hummed with ambition. At the center of it all stood Obinna Nla, founder and CEO of Nla Group, the biggest indigenous real estate conglomerate in Nigeria. At 39, Obinna was the definition of power and poise. Towering at 6'3", with a lean athletic build, smooth dark skin, and eyes that could silence a room, he was a man both admired and feared in boardrooms. But beneath the calm precision was a man who barely had a personal life. His life was contracts, construction, and strategy. He didn't believe in distractions until Chika Iwuchukwu walked into his life. It was a rainy Monday morning, exactly 3 years ago, when Chika first entered his office. She had applied for the role of executive assistant after her NYSC, walking into the skyscraper in a soaked blouse and borrowed shoes. Most candidates had fancy degrees and polished accents. Chika had something else: efficiency, humility, and a sharp eye for detail. Obinna hadn't intended to interview her personally, but when his former assistant abruptly resigned, Chika's CV landed on his desk by mistake. She entered his office holding a simple brown file, her natural hair tucked neatly in a bun, eyes lowered in respect. "Good morning, sir." He didn't look up immediately. "Sit," she did, quietly arranging her papers. When he finally looked up, their eyes met briefly, and for a second he was struck by her presence. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, but because she looked calm. He didn't smile. "Why do you want this job?" "I don't want it. I need it, sir." He raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "My mother sells akara in Yaba. I have 3 younger siblings. I don't have time to chase dreams. I just need to work." He stared at her. Honest. Unapologetically real. "You're hired." Fast forward 3 years, and Chika had become the invisible glue holding Obinna's daily life together. She knew his breakfast preferences: no sugar, light cream; his moods: don't speak when he's pacing; and his habits: he fiddled with his wristwatch when stressed. She never overstepped, never asked personal questions, never posted selfies with the CEO on LinkedIn like the others did. She stayed in the background, yet she managed to stay essential. One Wednesday, a major Dubai investor pulled out of a luxury development deal at the last minute. The entire office was tense. Obinna was in a rare visible rage, throwing files onto the floor. Chika didn't say anything. She waited. When the storm died down, she knocked softly and entered his office with a steaming cup of ginger tea. "What's this?" he barked. "You skipped lunch, and you'll need your voice for the 6 p.m. press call." He looked at her. No pity in her eyes, just professionalism, calmness, care. He took the cup, fingers brushing hers briefly. The touch lingered, but she quickly stepped back. "Thank you," he said softly. She nodded. "That's my job, sir." But for Obinna, the warmth in his chest that day lingered long after the tea was gone. The next morning, Chika didn't show up. Obinna noticed within minutes. "Where's Chika?" he asked the receptionist. "She called in sick, sir." "Sick?" She'd never taken a day off. Obinna sat back in his chair, uneasy. He tried to shake it off, but he couldn't focus. He called his driver twice, canceled a lunch meeting, and ended up making mistakes on a contract draft. Something that hadn't happened in 5 years. By 3 p.m., he sent her a text. "Heard you're not well. Hope it's nothing serious. Get well soon. Obinna." Her reply came much later. "Just a slight fever. Thank you, sir. They'll be back tomorrow." He found himself smiling at his phone. That night, he stood in his penthouse kitchen, pouring himself a glass of red wine. The city sparkled beneath him, but his thoughts were elsewhere. Why did her absence feel so loud? Was it just comfort, or something deeper? Obina didn't have the answers yet. But for the first time in a long while, the billionaire CEO, usually surrounded by blueprints and board reports, realized his heart was beginning to scribble its own set of plans. And Chica, his quiet, capable secretary, was right at the center of them. The day Chica returned to work, Obina felt a strange sense of relief. He didn't show it, of course. He was still the same composed CEO with a trimmed beard, custom-made suits, and a voice that rarely rose above a firm baritone. But when she walked into his office at exactly 7:55 a.m., 5 minutes earlier than required, as always, he noticed everything. Her slight cough, the way she held a warm flask of lemon tea, the paleness under her eyes. "You're not fully recovered," he said without looking up from his desk. "I'm well enough, sir," she replied gently, placing his morning reports on the table. "You didn't need to rush back. I don't like work piling up." He glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "You're not a machine, Chica." She smiled faintly. "Neither are you, sir." Something about her voice, soft, sure, without ego, clipped through the cold wall he always built around himself. She never tried to impress him with big grammar or charm. She just was real, reliable, present. Later that morning, during the weekly leadership meeting, the head of operations fumbled through a presentation. Obina's mood soured quickly. "This is vague. Numbers, Mr. Tund. I asked for real figures, not guesswork." Everyone tensed. Chica, standing quietly near the door, subtly walked up and handed Obina a folder. Inside was the detailed breakdown Head asked for, already prepared. He paused, flipped through the sheets, and slowly leaned back in his chair. "Thank you, Miss Iwuchikuru," he said without looking up. Mr. Tund turned red. The rest of the staff glanced at her, some with admiration, others with envy. But Chica just stepped back into her place by the wall, expression neutral. She didn't want praise. She just wanted things to go smoothly. For him, that evening, after everyone left, Obina sat alone in his office, reviewing contracts. The city below glittered through the glass walls. A soft knock came at his door. "It's late, Chica." She entered with a tray, hot jollof rice, grilled plantain, and fried turkey, and a bottle of water. "You haven't eaten," she said. He gave a short laugh. "How do you always know?" "I know how the day went. I keep track." He nodded slowly. "You keep track of everything, don't you?" "It's my job, sir." He looked up at her, eyes steady. "No, it's more than that." She blinked. "Sir, you make things easy for me, even when they shouldn't be." She smiled gently but didn't respond. Instead, she placed the tray down and turned to leave. But he stopped her. "Chica." She turned, brows lifted slightly. "Why haven't you ever asked for a raise or a promotion?" 3 years. Never once. She shrugged lightly. "Because I wasn't sent here to climb ladders. I just want to be useful." Her words struck him harder than she knew. That night, after she left, Obina didn't touch the food immediately. He sat back in his chair, staring at the door she had just walked out of. Useful? No. Chica was not just useful. She was the invisible glue holding his entire world together. And he was only just beginning to see it. It began with small things. Obina, ruthless in negotiations, emotionally distant, allergic to social chatter, started doing things out of character. He began to wait a few minutes after Chica clocked in before calling her. He started offering her lunch when he noticed she skipped hers. He no longer called her Miss Iwuchikuru with cold formality, just Chica. And when she was absent, even for a moment, it unsettled him more than He'd admit. He started noticing the way she hummed quietly while typing, how she always aligned the pens on his desk before leaving, and how she gently corrected him when he confused 2 different files. He had trusted her with his business long before he realized he was beginning to trust her with something far more fragile: his heart. One Thursday afternoon, Obina and a few top executives visited a new construction site in Aja. The sun scorched overhead, and sweat soaked through his designer shirt. After 2 hours of walking and arguing with site engineers, he returned to his car, frustrated. As soon as the door closed, His driver handed him a cold towel and a cooler. "Madam Chica say make I give you this," the man said with a small grin. Inside the cooler were chilled tiger nuts drink and a small note. "You always forget to hydrate on site. Drink this before you faint and embarrass us. See." Obinna read the note twice. His lips curved. For the rest of the ride, he didn't speak. He just stared out the window, clutching the small handwritten paper like it meant more than a contract. Back at the office, he entered and found her rearranging folders on his shelf. "You planned for the site visit?" She glanced at him. "Of course. You never remember to pack anything useful." "I see," he said, stepping closer. "You always plan ahead." She nodded. "Even for my health?" She smiled. "Someone has to. You treat your body like a bulldozer only for work." His laughter came quickly, warm and light, startling both of them. He hadn't laughed like that in a while. 2 days later, he entered the office unusually early, 7 a.m., and found Chica already at her desk, typing quietly with her hair loosely wrapped in a scarf. "No makeup today?" he asked without thinking. She looked up, surprised. "No, I didn't have the energy." "I like it." She blinked. "Sir? I mean, you look fine. Just natural." He awkwardly cleared his throat and walked into his office. Chica sat back slowly, heart pounding. That was new. Things continued to shift after that. Obinna began to pause when she spoke, listening longer. He called her in for meetings that didn't need her just so she'd be around. And sometimes he'd ask about her siblings, her mother's shop, or her favorite food, not as a boss, but as a man simply wanting to know more. One Friday evening, after everyone had left the office, Chica was gathering files when Obinna walked in, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. "Still working?" he asked. She smiled. "Just finishing your Monday documents. You always stay late. I like when everything is prepared ahead." He moved closer, watching her file neatly. "You're always thinking ahead, for me." She didn't respond immediately. Then softly, she said, "Someone has to." He looked at her, eyes lingering longer this time. "What if I asked you to stop being just my secretary?" Her breath caught. "What would I be then?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Obinna's eyes didn't move. "Something more." The room fell silent. Chica slowly closed the file in her hand and stared down at it. Unsure of what to say, he didn't push further. He simply walked back to his office, leaving her heart racing. That night, Chica couldn't sleep, and neither could he, because the shift had finally become undeniable. Obinna wasn't a man who second-guessed himself. He negotiated billionaire real estate deals with calm precision. He built housing estates from paper to skyscraper. He was respected, envied, and sometimes feared. But now, in the quiet moments after work, sitting in his high-rise office while the rest of the city slept, he was doing something very unfamiliar. He was thinking about a woman, not a model from the magazine covers he sometimes dated, not one of the society elites who tried to flatter their way into his schedule. No, it was Chica Iwuchukwu, the woman whose name wasn't even on the executive list but whose presence now lingered in his thoughts more than any profit margin. She was still just his secretary. But now, every time she walked in, his focus shifted, and he didn't know how to make it stop, or if he even wanted to. At the office, people had started to notice. Though no one dared say it out loud, eyes followed Chica when she passed. Some of the senior female staff began to whisper in corners. The HR manager once joked that Chica must have signed a secret promotion contract with the boss. Others mocked her quiet nature, calling her Madame Invisible. But Chica never responded. She did her work, efficiently, diligently, silently. One evening, she was packing up when Obinna walked into her office area. "Still here?" he asked, glancing at the clock. She smiled, slipping her laptop into her bag. "Yes, had to finalize the Abuja land documents." He nodded. "Walk with me." She blinked. "Sir? I'm going to the parking lot." "Walk with me." She hesitated, then followed. In the elevator, they stood side by side, silent. When the doors opened into the underground car park, the cool air greeted them. "I never asked," he said suddenly. "Do you enjoy working here?" She chuckled softly. Are you trying to conduct an exit interview? He smiled. No, I just realized I don't know much about what you actually feel. She stopped walking, turning to face him. You're the kind of boss who respects boundaries, Obinna. You don't ask personal questions. I appreciate that. But now I want to ask. She studied his face. He continued, I think about you, outside the office, more than I should. Her breath caught. I know it's complicated. You're my employee. I'm your boss. But I've tried to ignore it for too long. Obinna, he stepped closer. I'm not asking you for anything tonight. I just wanted you to know that you're not invisible to me. Not anymore. Her eyes shone with something soft and unreadable. But instead of replying, she simply said, Thank you for saying that. The next week, tension hung thick between them. Not of anger, but unspoken feelings. In meetings, their eyes met too often. When he handed her files, his fingers lingered. When she brought him coffee, she held the cup a bit longer. One day, during a private lunch meeting in his office, he finally asked the question that had been burning inside him. If I weren't your boss, would you have noticed me too? Chica looked at him, startled. Then, slowly, she said, You think I don't notice you? You think I haven't been managing your life behind this desk like a silent partner? Obinna's chest tightened. She continued, her voice low but firm. I've shielded you from boardroom chaos, scheduled your sanity, filtered your guests, and learned every version of your silence. I noticed you the moment you walked in 3 years ago. I just never thought I was allowed to say it. For a moment, the entire room seemed to still. Then Obinna whispered, You were always allowed. I was just too busy being powerful to realize who had the real power. They didn't touch. They didn't kiss. But something was sealed in that moment. Something stronger than words. Something deeper than status. The hearts behind desks had found each other. And nothing in the office would ever be the same again. The NLA Group's end-of-year gala was the most anticipated corporate event in Lagos. Held at the prestigious Eco-Atlantic Sky Pavilion. It was a night where real estate moguls, government officials, investors, celebrities, and business insiders all mingled beneath gold chandeliers and drank expensive champagne over light jazz and ambitious conversations. Obinna NLA had always attended alone. He hated unnecessary showiness. He arrived late, gave his obligatory speech, posed for a few pictures, and vanished into the night without entertaining gossip-hungry reporters. But this year, something shifted. A week before the gala, while going over the guest list with his assistant HR director, he glanced over at Chica as she quietly took notes beside him. Without looking up, he said, You're coming with me. The room fell silent. Chica raised her eyes slowly. Sir? I want you as my date, he said plainly. To the gala. The HR director nearly dropped her pen. Chica swallowed. Is this for work purposes? No, he said, staring directly at her. This is personal. The office was abuzz for days. Whispers circled like wind through hallways. Did you hear? She's going with the CEO. She must have used charm. Or jazz. I knew it. Look at how she walks, so innocent. Chica said nothing. She simply focused on her work. But inside, she was shaking. Not with fear, but with emotion. It was real. He had chosen her not just behind office doors but now publicly. The night of the gala arrived. Obinna wore a classic black tuxedo, his wristwatch glinting under the lights as he waited near the grand entrance. Cameramen swarmed the carpet, awaiting his arrival. Then she stepped out. Chica wore a navy blue mermaid gown, soft silk that clung in all the right places but remained tasteful. Her natural hair was styled into a soft afro updo, and her makeup was delicate, elegant, almost regal. When Obinna saw her, he forgot the cameras, the chatter, and the expectations. You look, he paused, like everything I've ever tried to build, but in human form. She smiled shyly. You clean up well too. Inside the ballroom, the atmosphere shifted the moment they walked in together, arm in arm. Conversations paused. Eyebrows lifted. Photos were taken. Whispers multiplied. Obinna didn't care. He stayed close to her the entire night. introducing her to important investors, walking her through his speeches, and laughing softly into her ear during a terrible performance from a hired saxophonist. Even the board of directors took notice. "You brought your secretary?" one asked. "I brought the woman who keeps my empire in order," Obinna replied coolly. "Whether or not she has a title doesn't change her value." Halfway through the night, they stepped out onto the balcony to escape the noise. Lagos twinkled below them, and the sea breeze danced around their shoulders. "Are you sure you wanted this?" Chika asked softly. "The rumors, the looks, all of it?" Obinna turned to face her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I've had everything money can buy, Chika. Power, houses, planes. But peace?" He looked into her eyes. "Peace is you, and I'm tired of hiding what brings me peace." Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. Obinna held her hands gently. "I may have built towers with bricks and mortar, but my heart, my real foundation, has been you all along." She looked at him, eyes wide. And there, under the moonlight, surrounded by luxury and gossip, without a ring or audience, he whispered the first real promise. "I want you, not as my secretary, as my woman, as my future." Her lips trembled, and though no kiss was shared that night, something far deeper sealed between them, an unspoken vow. For days after the gala, the office buzzed with an energy Chika had never known before. A different kind of silence. It wasn't the usual quiet that came from professionalism, but one thick with tension, jealousy, and curiosity. People stared more. They whispered more. But what surprised Chika the most was that Obinna didn't retreat from her like she feared he might after such a public appearance. If anything, he became even more open. He walked beside her during staff inspections. He handed her coffee in the morning instead of the other way around. And for the first time, when she entered his office, he smiled without reason. Still, he hadn't brought it up again. The moment on the balcony, the whispered words, the line they had clearly crossed. And it left Chika wondering, was it a moment of weakness, or the beginning of something real? One Thursday evening, Chika was leaving late. Most of the staff had gone, but the sound of Obinna's office door clicking open behind her made her pause. "Chika," he called. She turned. "I'm going for a site retreat at our new ape project over the weekend. Just 2 days. Join me." Her heart thumped. "Me? Yes. I need your mind there. Is this work?" He held her gaze. "It's everything." She hesitated, then nodded. "I'll pack my bag." The site in Ape was still in early development, just cleared land, survey markers, and a few temporary structures. But the company had erected a small, private chalet for senior site meetings. Chika arrived first. She was greeted by 2 chefs, a private driver, and a quiet field manager. Obinna arrived an hour later in a dark SUV, stepping out in jeans and a polo shirt, more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "Thanks for coming," he said as they walked toward the chalet. "You said you needed my mind," she replied with a soft smile. He stopped walking and turned toward her. "Chika, I need more than your mind." She froze. "I didn't bring you here to talk about contracts," he said. "I brought you here because I needed distance. From the city, from the noise, from everyone. So I could say what I've been holding in." He took a deep breath. "I love you." Chika's mouth parted slightly. "Obinna, you've been my peace, my order, my constant. I thought I could just admire you quietly, but I can't. I don't want to go another year pretending you're just my secretary." He reached into his pocket. Not a ring box, but a small folded note. He handed it to her. She unfolded it slowly. It was a list, written in his handwriting. "Reasons I can't imagine life without you. You listen when I don't speak. You understand what I don't explain. You respect what I build but remind me I'm still human. You never ask for more even when you deserve it. You are my favorite kind of silence." Chika read it twice, her eyes stinging. "I don't have a ring with me," Obinna said softly. "But if you say yes, I'll fly to your mother's shop tomorrow and do this the right way." She laughed through her tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Obinna." He stepped forward, pulled her into his arms, and held her like a man who had found home. And that night, under the stars in a quiet village on the edge of Lagos, the billionaire CEO proposed with a list instead of diamonds, because he already knew she was worth more than gold. By Monday morning, Lagos had erupted. Real estate billionaire engaged to his secretary, from desk to diamond. Meet the woman who captured Obinna Nla's heart. Power couple or power play? Chika hadn't posted anything. Obinna hadn't released a statement either. But someone, most likely one of the domestic staff at the Ape Chalet, had snapped a discreet photo of the two of them embracing under the stars. The picture spread like wildfire across blogs and business tabloids. Some called it a Cinderella story. Others accused her of seducing her boss for status. A few praised Obinna for choosing simplicity over glamour, while many criticized him for falling for the help. Chika sat at her desk that morning as her phone buzzed nonstop with notifications. But she didn't respond to a single one. Not even the cruel messages from distant relatives or jealous former classmates. She wasn't interested in public opinion. What mattered was the man standing beside her office door. "Ready?" Obinna asked. "For what?" she replied, looking up. He smiled. "To tell them the truth." That afternoon, Obinna held an unscheduled company-wide staff meeting. Executives, interns, cleaners, everyone was invited. He walked onto the stage alone, dressed in a simple gray native attire without any flashy designer labels. He looked softer than usual, but no less powerful. "I know there have been rumors," he began calmly, "and I know that some of you have opinions, some supportive, some critical. That's human." He paused, letting the room breathe. "But let me say this clearly. I am engaged to Chika Iwuchukwu, and not because she's beautiful or submissive or from a quiet background. I chose her because for 3 years, she has shown me what loyalty, intelligence, humility, and strength look like." A murmur ran through the crowd. She didn't chase titles. She didn't manipulate for favor. She simply did her work and changed my life while doing it. If any of you think that makes her less deserving of love, then maybe this company needs to reconsider its definition of value. Silence. Then, slowly, softly, someone clapped. Then another. Then the entire room. Back at her desk, Chika's phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Obinna. "Don't let their noise become your identity. You were mine long before they knew it." She smiled, her heart warm. But later that evening, when she got home, she found something unexpected waiting outside her apartment gate. A sleek black SUV with tinted glass. Obinna stepped out, dressed in his kaftan, followed by his driver. And a jeweler. He walked up to her. "You said yes without a ring," he said softly. "But you deserve more than just a promise." He opened a tiny black box. Inside was a custom-designed engagement ring, 3 simple diamonds, each one symbolizing a year she had served him quietly, lovingly, and faithfully. She gasped. "Obinna, no one gets to define what you're worth, Chika. Not blogs, not gossip, not even me. But this is just the beginning." He slid the ring onto her finger and held her hand. And under the faint glow of the streetlight in the middle of a humble neighborhood, a billionaire knelt for a woman the world once overlooked. The wedding wasn't meant to be grand. That was Chika's only request when the planning started. No gold-plated invitations. No celebrity event planners. "I just want something real," she had told Obinna one evening while they sat on the balcony of his Lekki penthouse, watching the city lights blink like shy stars. Obinna had nodded, slipping an arm around her waist. "Then real is what we'll give them." But real didn't mean small. Not when you were Nigeria's most sought-after real estate CEO. Despite all attempts to keep it modest, the wedding attracted attention from every media house in Lagos, and even a few from abroad. Yet somehow it remained intimate. The venue was a lush rooftop garden in Victoria Island, decorated with fresh hibiscus, jasmine, and native ferns. Obinna personally oversaw the layout, rejecting anything too flashy. No chandeliers, no marbled stages, just nature, sky, and the people who mattered most. Chika wore a simple yet elegant white lace dress designed by a local fashion house in Yaba. Her makeup was light, her joy uncontainable. She walked down the petal-strewn aisle on her mother's arm. Her father had passed long ago, and Mama Iwuchukwu, with shaking hands and a full heart, held her daughter proudly. Obinna stood waiting, dressed in a crisp white agbada trimmed with soft gold thread. He looked at her like she was a sunrise, fresh, warm, and full of promise. The officiant began the vows. "Do you, Obinna-nla, take Chika Iwuchukwu to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," he said, his voice unwavering. "And do you, Chika?" "I do," she interrupted, laughing softly, eyes misty with tears. They exchanged rings. Obinna slid hers on like it was always meant to be there. Then came the kiss. It was soft, unrushed. No fireworks, no dramatic music. Just the wind in their hair, the sun setting in the horizon, and the gentle clapping of hands and hearts. Later that evening, at the reception under string lights and the open sky, Obinna stood up to give a speech. "Many people think I fell in love with my secretary," he began. "But they're wrong." A few heads turned. "I fell in love with a woman who happened to be my secretary. A woman who held me up without asking for recognition. Who corrected my mistakes in silence and celebrated my wins with a smile. Who knew the pressure of my empire but never sought a throne, only to help." He turned to Chika. "You reminded me that love doesn't start in boardrooms or ballrooms. Sometimes it starts in a shared calendar, or a cup of tea during a tough day. Thank you for making my world clearer, softer, and fuller." Tears rolled down her cheeks. The crowd stood and applauded. It wasn't just a wedding. It was a celebration of two hearts that had worked side by side, quietly, until they beat as one. The office felt different now. Not because Chika had moved into Obinna's house, or because she now wore a platinum wedding band, but because the staff no longer saw her as just the secretary. They watched her more closely, whispered when she passed. Some greeted her with artificial cheer, others with stiff silence. The gossip hadn't died, it had only changed its tone. Madame La, the billionaire's wife, the girl who jumped the corporate ladder. Chika noticed, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she continued arriving at 7:30 a.m., organizing schedules, reviewing memos, and managing Obinna's calendar, just as she had before. The only difference now was that she didn't sit outside his office. She had her own executive director, operations, and special projects. It wasn't a favor. Obinna had offered her the role months ago, long before their relationship became public. She had rejected it at the time, not wanting to be seen as an opportunist. Now she had earned it with 3 years of late nights, smart strategies, and selfless support. But the transition wasn't easy. One day, during a management meeting, one of the senior partners, Mr. F.A. Juyi, cleared his throat and said, "With all due respect, sir, I think your wife's presence on the board might create emotional complications." The room tensed. Eyes darted from Obinna to Chika. Obinna raised a brow. "Would you say the same if I married an investor or another executive?" F.A. Juyi hesitated. "Well, this situation is different. She was your secretary. Now she's your wife and an executive. People will talk." "Let them talk," Chika said calmly. All eyes turned. "I didn't sit beside him for the ring. I sat beside him because I worked for it. Quietly, diligently, without ever asking to be seen. If anyone here feels threatened by my title, they're welcome to earn theirs too." Silence. Then Obinna chuckled and leaned back. "That's my wife." Later that night, Chika sat on their balcony, sipping ginger tea. "Did I overstep?" she asked. Obinna came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "No, you stood your ground, and you did it with grace." She sighed. "I don't want to be the reason anyone resents you." He turned her around. "Chika, I built an empire from the ground up. But you're the one who keeps it standing." 1 week later, she launched her first independent project under the company, Affordable Real Dreams. It was a housing initiative designed to build safe, stylish, and affordable homes for low-income families in Lagos and Port Harcourt. The board raised eyebrows, but the people cheered. Families moved in. Children ran across tiled floors and gardens. Elderly women cried as they turned keys in locks they never thought they could own. And Chica? She stood at every sight, in heels and hard hats, smiling. Not as a billionaire's wife, but as a woman who had carved her own seat at the table beside the king, and used it to make others rise. The scandal broke on a quiet Monday morning. Chica was reviewing blueprints for her next, affordable Real Dreams estate when her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. First, it was one of her site managers, then the head of PR, then her best friend, Ada Ora. She ignored the first few calls. But when her phone vibrated with a message from her mother that read, "Chica, are you okay? They are dragging your name on the internet." She froze. With a growing knot in her stomach, she opened the news app. Headline: Billionaire CEO's wife under fire for fraudulent land allocation deal. Below it were photos of her and a man she had never met, hands shaking, standing in front of a building site. The story claimed that Chica had illegally allocated land to shell companies under the new housing initiative in exchange for personal kickbacks. Social media exploded. She only got the position because she married him. Karma is already catching up with her. From secretary to scammer, Obina's company will collapse if he keeps letting his wife run the show. By the time she reached Obina's office, reporters had gathered outside the building. His assistant tried to block her from entering his office, clearly not recognizing her in the whirlwind chaos. She pushed through and opened the door. Obina was already standing, holding a printed copy of the article. His eyes were narrowed, jaw clenched. "Chica," he said softly, "please tell me you didn't know anything about this." She stared at him, stung. "You think I could do that?" He hesitated. "I don't want to believe it, but we need to be honest." Chica's hands trembled. "I didn't do this, Obina. I don't even know that man in the photo." He looked into her eyes, searching. "I've worked too hard for this," she whispered. "For us. Why would I ruin it with corruption?" Obina finally sat down, running a hand through his hair. "Okay, then let's find out who's behind this." The investigation began. Chica was temporarily removed from public appearances to protect the company's image. Her project was put on hold. Her office was cleared for a third-party audit. The staff whispered more now. Some stopped greeting her altogether. Even at home, the silence between her and Obina grew. He didn't accuse her again, but he also didn't reach for her as quickly. Until one night, 2 weeks in, she found him on the floor of his study, his head in his hands. "This is killing me," he said hoarsely. "Not because of the company. Because I don't know how to fight for you without hurting us both." Chica knelt beside him. "Then don't fight me. Fight with me." And he did. Obina launched an internal investigation. He hired a forensic auditor. It turned out that the man in the photo was a former contractor who had forged documentation using her name and signature. The images were manipulated. A rival real estate firm had paid bloggers and journalists to spread the story, afraid of losing market share to Chica's affordable housing initiative. When the truth came out, it didn't just clear her name. It elevated her. The same media that dragged her praised her. Obina's wife, wrongly accused, fights back with class and courage. Chica Iwuchikunla, from secretary to queen of real change. At a press conference, Chica stood beside Obina and addressed the nation. "I was once the girl who brought tea and managed calendars. Now I'm the woman who builds homes. This isn't about power, it's about purpose. And I won't be silenced by fear or headlines." The crowd roared. Obina took her hand, lifted it high, and kissed it. "I stand with my wife," he said. "Yesterday, today, always." The applause from the press conference still echoed in their ears, but barely a week later, the walls of Chica and Obina's fairy tale began to tremble. It began with a phone call. One that came late in the night, piercing through the calm like a blade. Obina stirred and answered. "Hello?" There was silence for a moment before the voice on the other end broke down. It was his younger sister, Amaka. "Obina, it's Mama." She collapsed. Mama-in-law, Obina's mother, had never liked Chica. To her, Chica was the girl who came from nothing, who didn't know the proper way to greet elders, didn't serve drinks the traditional way, and worst of all, had dared to marry her first son without a single bride price negotiation she approved of. Though Obinna had tried to bridge the divide, Mama-in-law remained cold. But now she was in the hospital, unconscious from a stroke. Chika stood behind Obinna as the family gathered in the hallway of the private hospital. His uncles, cousins, and siblings had all arrived. All of them wore the same look: tired eyes, pressed lips, and barely concealed blame. Amaka glanced at Chika and whispered, "You should wait outside." Obinna turned immediately. "She's not going anywhere. She's my wife." One of the older uncles stepped forward, folding his arms. "Obinna, let's not cause drama. Not today. Just let peace reign." The implication hung in the air. Chika lowered her head, not in shame, but restraint. She knew she didn't have to fight this one. Not here. Not now. In the days that followed, she visited Mama-in-law daily with Obinna. She stayed behind after he left, speaking softly to the woman who still hadn't opened her eyes. She brought soup and warm towels. She helped the nurses clean her. She even paid for a neurology specialist to fly in from South Africa. Still, the family remained skeptical. She's just trying to buy her way into Mama's heart. She knows the media is watching. Don't be fooled. A secretary is still a secretary. Obinna grew more agitated. The tension with his family began to affect his sleep, his temper, his focus at work. One night, he snapped. "Why do you keep doing all this?" he asked Chika. "Why don't you just let them think what they want?" She looked at him quietly. "Because I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for you. And for the woman who raised you." His shoulders softened. And for the first time since Mama-in-law collapsed, he held Chika without words. Then came the turning point. It was a quiet Thursday morning. Chika had gone alone to the hospital. She was wiping Mama-in-law's hands with a warm cloth, humming a lullaby her own mother used to sing. When the older woman's fingers twitched, Chika froze. Mama-in-law?" she whispered. The woman's eyes fluttered open. Weakly, she croaked, "Water." Chika dashed out, called the nurses, called Obinna. Everyone came running. 3 days later, Mama-in-law spoke again, this time clearly. To everyone's surprise, she asked for Chika. Alone. Chika entered the room, unsure what to expect. The old woman stared at her long and hard, then finally spoke. "I thought you were just a pretty face, a lucky girl with no roots. But you have proven me wrong." Chika said nothing. Mama-in-law sighed. "I see how you love him, and how you stayed even when you could have walked away." She reached out a hand. Chika took it, tears welling up. "You may not be the wife I prayed for," Mama-in-law said, "but you are the woman he needs." Peace had finally begun to settle over Obinna and Chika's lives. With Mama-in-law's recovery and quiet approval, the family's judgment eased into silence. Even the tabloids, always hungry for scandal, had grown bored of the secretary-turned-billionaire's bride narrative. Chika returned to work with her head held high. She no longer sat outside Obinna's office. She had one of her own now. Though technically still his executive assistant, Obinna had added special projects director to her title. But not everyone was clapping, especially not Didi. Didi had been Chika's closest friend since university. She had helped Chika pay rent when she was jobless, shared suya in the rain, and was the first to hear about her new boss. Back when Obinna was just Mr. to Chika. But now, Didi's laughter had turned hollow. Her visits had grown shorter, and every compliment came with a sharp edge. Se mencionó. Secretary to First Lady overnight. You're glowing, babe. Rich husband will do that to you. You're lucky-o. All I got was a mechanic who cheated on me with his customer. Chika had noticed the change but chose not to confront it. Until the betrayal showed up in ink. It began with a leaked memo. A confidential real estate partnership between La Estates and the Lagos state government was published in a rival newspaper, along with emails only 2 people had access to. Obinna was furious. This could ruin the deal. Who had access to this file? Chika's face tightened. Just you. And me. They checked every system, every log. The leak had come from Chika's email. Obinna turned to her, brows furrowed. Do you think someone hacked you? She nodded slowly. Or, someone close to me used my system. Chika's heart sank. She knew who had used her laptop that week. Didi. She had stopped by just 2 days before the leak, saying her phone was bad and asking to check her email. Chica, without thinking, had handed over her work laptop. Obina wanted to report it to legal, but Chica pleaded with him. Give me a day. Let me talk to her first. He nodded reluctantly. Chica met Didi at their favorite umla spot in Surulere. As they sat, the sun heavy above them, the silence between them stretched longer than ever. I know it was you, Chica said quietly. Didi didn't deny it. She looked up, anger dancing in her eyes. Do you know what it's like watching you live a life we used to joke about? To see you suddenly become the face of success while the rest of us drown? Chica's throat tightened. So you tried to destroy my reputation? Didi scoffed. You were never meant to have that job. That man. That spotlight. You were supposed to stay where we all started. Chica stood, her voice cold. We all had the same starting line. You chose to stand still. That night, Chica handed Obina the full confession. Didi's voice recorded during their conversation. Obina forwarded it to legal and cut all communication with her. But Chica didn't cry. She sat in her home office, staring at the ceiling. Obina came in quietly and sat beside her. Are you okay? No, she whispered. But I will be. I faced rejection from strangers. But this hurts more than anything. Obina pulled her into his arms. Then let's hurt together and heal together. The clouds rolled in over Lagos Island that Friday afternoon, thick and gray like smoke from a burning secret. Rain battered the city's skyline, and thunder cracked over Nla Estate's glass tower as if foreshadowing what was to come. Inside the boardroom, everything felt colder than the weather outside. Chica sat beside Obina, pen poised, eyes steady, but her heart trembled. The signing ceremony for the Lagos waterfront housing project was about to begin. A multi-billion naira development deal that would transform the slums near the marina into eco-friendly homes. And it was Chica who had drafted the proposal, supervised the architectural team, and even negotiated the final pricing. It was the biggest moment of her professional life. But as Governor Ejibade's convoy pulled into the compound, Obina's phone vibrated with a message that made his jaw tighten. What's wrong? Chica asked. He turned the phone toward her. It was a petition signed by a few former board members and distant stakeholders, accusing Chica of unlawful access, conflict of interest, and corporate manipulation. At the top of the signatories, Chief Maduka Nla, Obina's cousin. Chica's hands grew clammy. This is their last card, Obina muttered. They want to shake you before the deal is sealed. Chica's lips trembled, but she nodded. I won't back down. Not today. She stood, smoothed her suit, and walked out of the boardroom to breathe. In the hallway, she saw her reflection in the glass, powerful, yes, but human. For a long time, she had been Obina's assistant, then his love, and now his wife. But today she had to be something else. She had to be the reason this company survived. The signing began with introductions. Obina welcomed the state officials. But then the room turned to Chica. Mrs. Nla, you supervised this project directly. Kindly walk us through the proposal. Chica stood. Every eye turned to her. Some expectant, some doubtful, some hostile. But her voice did not shake. She spoke about sustainability. She showed projections. She broke down cost per unit in real time and even translated technical jargon for the press. By the time she finished, Governor Ejibade nodded in admiration. I'm impressed. Many CEOs don't even know this level of detail. Obina smiled. That's why I married her. Laughter filled the room. But just as pens touched paper, a junior staff member rushed in and whispered something to Obina. A reporter had just gone live with a story titled, CEO's Wife Under Investigation. Silence fell. Obina stood to respond, but Chica held his hand. No, let me. She stepped forward and addressed the room. Yes, I've seen the story. Yes, a few bitter ex-employees and family members are trying to discredit me. But I ask you to judge me not by gossip, but by this project. Judge me by the details I've worked on day and night. Judge me by the numbers that will provide thousands of homes for Lagos families. Judge me by this signature, She held up the pen. And what it will represent. She turned to the governor. I stand by this deal. Fully. If you believe I'm not worthy, I'll walk away right now. The room held its breath. Then Governor Ajabaid smiled. Mrs. Nla, if I had 10 more of you, this state would be transformed. He signed. Then Obinna signed. And finally Chika signed. The deal was sealed. That night, rain still poured, but the Nla home was full of warmth and candlelight. Obinna poured champagne into their glasses and held hers up. To the woman who walked into my life with a notebook and left her footprints on my empire. Chika smiled. To the man who believed in me before I even believed in myself. They clinked glasses and kissed. The morning after the signing felt like standing at the edge of a mountain, breathtaking and terrifying. Lagos buzzed with news of the historic deal, and everywhere Chika turned, her name was on lips, in headlines, and on investor reports. But it wasn't just fame that came knocking, it was power. Obinna's phone rang as they finished breakfast on the balcony, watching the city come alive below them. He answered, listened briefly, then turned to Chika with a thoughtful expression. That was Chief Fatai from the Nla Estate's executive board, he said slowly. Chika dabbed her lips with a napkin. And? They want to create a new position, Vice Chair of Strategy and Development. And they want you to take it. Chika's heart skipped a beat. Me? You've earned it, he said. The waterfront deal alone is enough to silence every critic. But your wife, they'll say I didn't earn it. They'll say just. Obinna cut her off gently. Chika, you're not just my wife. You're the reason this company has doubled its value in 1 year. Anyone who's blind to that doesn't deserve a seat at the table. She looked down at the tea in her cup. If I sit at that table, things will change. Obinna leaned closer. You mean we will change? She nodded. I won't be your secretary anymore. I won't just be taking your notes and organizing your schedule. I'll be making decisions, challenging you, holding my own ground. Obinna smiled. Then I'll move over. The seat beside me has always been yours. By the following Monday, the boardroom looked different. Chika entered not with her iPad and notepad in hand, but in a crisp cream power suit. Her usual seat at the side of the room was empty, replaced now with a golden nameplate at the head table. Mrs. Chika Nla, Vice Chair, Strategy VE Development. Some board members exchanged glances. A few smirked. Chief Maduka, ever the snake in a designer agbada, cleared his throat loudly. Let's hope this won't be another case of bedroom politics spilling into the boardroom. Chika met his gaze, unflinching. Or perhaps it's finally a case of results replacing entitlement. The room quieted. She took her seat. And for the first time in the company's long male-dominated history, a woman, no, his wife, sat beside the CEO, not behind him. Later that evening, Chika found herself alone in the office. Obinna had gone for a media interview, and she stayed back to review a new project proposal. She stood by the window, watching the traffic below, and whispered to herself, "Is this what I wanted?" She remembered the first time she entered this building. Nervous, underpaid, and unnoticed. And now she was leading decisions that would shape the future of Lagos. But as she turned around, she saw Obinna standing in the doorway, tie loosened, eyes filled with admiration. "I missed having you on my team today," he said softly. She chuckled. "I was still on your team, just sitting at the front this time." He walked to her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "We've built something rare, Chika. Love in the middle of ambition. Peace in the center of pressure. But will it last?" she asked. "Now that the whole world is watching?" "It will," he said, kissing her forehead. "Because no matter what titles change, they'll always be your biggest fan." The conference room at Nla Estates was charged with silent tension. Chika had just wrapped up a brilliant pitch for a green tech real estate project in Ape, earning nods of approval from international investors via Zoom. Applause followed. Obinna gave her a proud smile. But as she stepped out into the hallway, a familiar voice stopped her in her tracks. "Chika?" She turned and nearly stumbled. Standing there in an oversized Ankara shirt, with a camera hanging from his neck and an old press badge clipped to his pocket, was Tundo Koro, her ex-boyfriend. her ex-nightmare. Tund? She said, stunned. He gave a sheepish smile. It's been a long time. 10 years ago, Tund had been her campus love, a charming mass comm student with dreams of becoming Nigeria's most respected journalist. But beneath that dream was arrogance and control. He belittled her ambitions, discouraged her from chasing opportunities, and once humiliated her in front of a crowd when she dared challenge him. She hadn't seen him since the night he stormed out of her life, after she got her internship letter at a TV station in Abuja, and he called her too ambitious for a wife. "What are you doing here?" she asked, forcing composure. "I work freelance now," he said, waving his badge. "The City Watch sent me to cover the Nla Estate's transformation story. Imagine my shock when I saw the name, Chika Nla. I had to see it with my own eyes." "I'm busy, Tund." He held up a hand. "I know. I'm not here to beg for anything. I just wanted to say." He leaned closer, his voice lower. "Some secrets don't stay buried forever." Chika stiffened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Relax," he said with a chuckle. "Just nostalgia. Or maybe I'm remembering a few stories from back in school. How you sacrificed so much to get ahead. Let's not pretend Lagos media won't eat that up." Her eyes turned sharp. "You want to blackmail me?" He smiled coolly. "Not if we can work something out. A small contract. A piece of the PR pie. You scratch my back, I'll keep quiet about everything I know." Chika's phone buzzed. It was Obinna. "Excuse me," she said, walking away with a dangerously calm expression. By the time she got to her car, Chika's hands trembled. Not from fear, but fury. Tund was bluffing. There was nothing real he had against her. But the problem wasn't truth, it was perception. She was a woman in power. The vultures were always circling. Obinna was waiting at home. She didn't tell him at first, not because she didn't trust him, but because she needed to be sure she could handle this herself. But by midnight, she sat beside him and quietly said, "Someone from my past showed up today. Someone who thinks I owe him silence." Obinna put down his tablet. "Who?" Tund. His face darkened. "What did he say?" "That I need to give him a PR contract or else hell spread rumors about my university days. Lies mostly. Half-truths, maybe." Obinna leaned forward. "Chika, I don't care about any of that. But I do care about your peace. And your name." She looked at him. "Should I pay him off?" "No," he said firmly. "We'll face this together. And if he wants a war, hell get one. But not with you at the front line. With me." The next day, Tund received an unexpected visit from the legal team of Nla Estates, with a defamation lawsuit threat and a warning that anything released would be met with full corporate retaliation. His bluff had failed. And Chika? She walked into her next board meeting with the same confidence as before, chin high, voice firm. But something had shifted in her. No longer just a secretary. No longer just a CEO's wife. She was a woman the world would not silence. Chika stood in front of her vanity mirror, her fingers gently tracing the wedding ring on her left hand. It sparkled, bold and beautiful, just like the life she now lived. But beneath the brilliance, something inside her felt clouded. It had been 2 weeks since the confrontation with Tund, and though Obinna had swiftly neutralized the threat, the aftermath had left ripples in her world. She was no longer just Mrs. Nla, the brilliant former secretary turned CEO's wife. She was now news. The gossip blogs had started. From secretary to wife. Did Chika sleep her way to the top? Nla Estate's billionaire CEO marries his former assistant. Coincidence or calculation? Even though there was no official statement from the company, the whispers had grown louder. PR calls came in. Obinna's board started raising questions about transparency and image control. And at the heart of it all, Chika's integrity was on trial. Obinna noticed the change. He saw it in the way she triple-checked her outfits before meetings, in how she paused before speaking, wary that her words might be twisted, in the way she distanced herself from the office staff she used to laugh with during lunch. He found her in the garden one evening, sitting by the hibiscus bushes, her heels discarded. "You're quiet lately," he said, handing her a glass of fresh pineapple juice. "I've been thinking," she said softly. "About?" She looked at him. About how quickly people forget who you really are. How all it takes is one rumor to erase years of hard work. Obinna sat beside her. They may forget, but I never will. She gave a faint smile. That's sweet. But it's not enough to quiet the noise. They don't see me the way you do, Obi. He took her hand. Then let's change the narrative. Let's go public with the real story. A feature. An interview. Let them hear your journey from you, not from cowards behind keyboards. Chica hesitated. You think the world wants truth? Or just drama? I think the world wants strength. And they need to see yours. The interview was scheduled with Nollywood Weekly, a magazine known for its balance of entertainment and honest journalism. It wasn't just about clearing her name, it was about reclaiming it. On camera, Chica didn't hold back. I started as a secretary with nothing but a pen and a prayer, she said. Yes, I worked hard. Yes, I was noticed. And yes, I married my boss. But love isn't a scandal. Neither is ambition. When asked about her past, she looked directly into the camera. The past shaped me, but it does not define me. And no one has the right to weaponize a woman's story against her. The interview dropped the next Monday. It went viral. Suddenly, the narrative changed. Chikanla, a new voice for working women in Nigeria. Secretary to CEO's wife and still her own woman. She was invited to speak at events, featured in Forbes Africa, and even shortlisted for a Women's Leadership Award. But just as things began to settle, Chica got an anonymous message that shook her. A photo. Obinna, at a restaurant, with a woman. Their hands were close, smiling. He's hiding things too. You're not the only one with a past. Chica stared at the image, her heartbeat loud in her chest. The woman in the picture looked vaguely familiar. She looked up, and Obinna was walking toward her, smiling. But now her mind was spinning. Was her husband hiding something? Was there another shadow she hadn't seen? Chica's hands trembled as she held the phone. The photo wasn't just a random capture. Someone had taken time to find the right angle, the perfect moment to plant a seed of doubt. Obinna's smile in the picture was relaxed, familiar, almost too familiar. And the woman, she studied the stranger's face again. Almond-shaped eyes, short curly hair, a beauty mark above her lip. Something about her felt too intentional. Who are you? Chica murmured, zooming in again and again. Obinna walked in through the door, humming softly and loosening his tie. You won't believe how today went, he said. We finally got the Lekki shoreline deal. But it's Chima that almost messed. Chica turned the phone screen to him, cutting him off. Who is she? Obinna's steps slowed. He looked at the image, blinked, and frowned. Where did you get this? He asked calmly. Does it matter? Chica asked. It's you, with her, at some restaurant. Your hands are almost touching. He walked closer, now taking the phone and staring at it harder. His face changed not with guilt, but with recognition. I can explain, he said gently. Chica folded her arms. Please do. Obinna sat down on the edge of the bed and motioned for her to sit. But she remained standing, watching him with eyes that begged for the truth. Her name is Aisha, he began. She's
my ex-fiancée.
From many years ago, before I ever met you. Chica's stomach twisted.
Fiancée?
We were engaged for 6 months. She left me after my mother's stroke. Said I was too distracted. That she didn't sign up to be second place. He sighed. After we broke up, I threw myself into work. She reached out recently. Said she wanted to apologize. Closure. And you thought meeting her secretly at a restaurant was a good idea? Chica asked, voice sharper now. You didn't even mention her. Not once. I didn't think it was relevant. It was a one-time meeting. I never planned to hide anything. That's why I didn't delete the messages. You can read them. He handed her his phone. She hesitated but opened it. There it was. A message from Aisha. I'm sorry for the way I left. I heard about your marriage. I just wanted to say congratulations. And that I was wrong. Another message. Thank you for giving me time to apologize in person. You're truly a good man, Obinna. She's lucky. Chica read it twice. Then once more. The tension in her shoulders slowly loosened. She said I was lucky, she whispered. Obina took her hand. You are, but not as lucky as I am. That night, they sat on the rooftop patio, a soft breeze brushing their skin. I'm sorry for not telling you, Obina said. I wasn't trying to hide it. I just didn't want old stories to distract from our new chapter. Chica leaned on his shoulder. I understand now, but next time, no secrets, even if it feels small. Promise? He kissed her forehead. Promise. Just then, her phone buzzed again. Another message. This one read, "This is not over. Aisha was just a piece of the puzzle. You're not ready for what's coming next." Attached, a video clip. Chica's blood ran cold. The footage was grainy but clear enough. It was her, at the office, hugging a junior staff member. The caption, "How loyal is she really?" Chica's hands shook as she replayed the video, over and over again. The hug was innocent, just a warm, friendly embrace shared with Depo, one of the marketing analysts, after he landed his first solo client. But the camera angle, the timing, the malicious caption, "How loyal is she really?" Obina took the phone and narrowed his eyes. That footage. It's from the 8th floor break room. But that's not a company camera. He frowned deeply, which means someone installed their own surveillance device. Chica's face went pale. Someone is spying on us. On you, he corrected, standing up. But now they've involved me too. By morning, Obina's office was a quiet hive of tension. Only a few people were allowed in. Security teams combed through the office under the guise of maintenance. IT did a sweep for unauthorized devices. They found 3 hidden cameras, 2 in the marketing wing and 1 in the executive kitchen. They were transmitting to an external drive, not the office servers, the head of security explained. It's no amateur. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. Obina didn't flinch. Find out who. Now, he turned to Chica. No more walking around this office alone. If anyone tries to intimidate you, I'll slap them, she muttered. Obina chuckled slightly, admiring her fire even in crisis. I was gonna say call me, but sure, slapping is also effective. Later that day, Chica sat at her desk, heart pounding. She stared at the envelope that had been slipped under her office door. Her name was typed on it in bold black. Inside, photos, pictures of her from her early university days. Some blurry, others embarrassing. One of her dancing at a party in a crop top. Then a typed note. Ever wonder what the board would think of the CEO's secretary-turned-wife with this reputation? She gripped the paper tightly. Enough was enough. Obina burst into the conference room mid-meeting with the board. I know some of you have been receiving anonymous warnings about my wife, he began, eyes scanning their startled faces. The room went quiet. Let me make it clear, he said, voice cold and commanding. Anyone working to discredit her is also working to undermine this company, and me. If you have a problem with my choice in a partner, tender your resignation. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Because Chica is not just my wife. She's the reason I still believe in this company. And I will protect her, publicly and privately. He walked out before anyone could speak. That evening they sat on the couch. Chica stared at him, still stunned by how boldly he defended her. You didn't have to do that, she whispered. Obina turned to her. I did. Because you're more than my secretary. More than my wife. You're my peace, Chica. She held his hand, but her voice trembled. Someone's trying to destroy that peace. He nodded. Then we'll fight. Together. The next day, Obina's investigator sent a message. We traced the devices to an internal employee. You won't believe who it is. The name on the report felt like a slap across Obina's face. Gerald Okocha, his longtime friend, his trusted chief financial officer, the man who toasted at his wedding, who had stood beside him during the company's roughest storms. Obina stared at the screen, his jaw tightening. Are you sure? He asked the head of security. Without a doubt, the man replied. All 3 cameras were purchased using a shell account linked to Gerald's personal bank. The signal routed through a private server in Lekki, one Gerald owns. Obina sat back, stunned. A wave of betrayal surged through him like ice water. He was my best man, he whispered. Meanwhile, Chica was in the office kitchen when Gerald walked in, smiling like nothing had happened. Morning, First Lady, he teased, grabbing a bottle of water. She forced a smile. Morning, Gerald. But her hands trembled. Knowing what she knew, took everything not to scream, not to slap him. Head tried to ruin her, all while laughing with her husband and clinking glasses at dinner. Back in Obina's office, Obina stood at the window, staring out over the city skyline. 1,000 thoughts warred in his mind. Why? Gerald had money, power, respect. What had Chica ever done to him? Then it clicked. It wasn't about what Chica had done. It was about what Obina had chosen. A secretary. A nobody. A woman Gerald once referred to as office furniture. He couldn't stand that she had risen. That she was the one Obina had chosen over the polished, high-class women Gerald had tried to introduce him to. This wasn't about love. It was about ego. That night, Obina came home unusually quiet. Chica met him at the door, eyes searching his face. You saw the name, didn't you? He nodded. Her voice softened. What will you do? Obina clenched his fists. Expose him. In front of everyone. The next morning, company town hall. The large screen behind the stage showed a looping video montage. Hidden camera footage being installed, transactions traced, photos of Gerald entering the server location. Gasps filled the room. Gerald stood frozen near the back, red creeping up his neck. Obina stepped onto the stage. I built this company with trust at the foundation. And today, I was forced to confront betrayal. Not from a stranger, but from someone I called a brother. The room went silent. This man, he pointed at Gerald, planted surveillance devices, spread false narratives, and tried to ruin my wife's name and my own. Security approached Gerald, who didn't fight back. Just stared at Obina with wide, unblinking eyes. You chose her over everything, Gerald said bitterly. Obina didn't flinch. No, I chose right. Later, in his office, Chica hugged Obina tightly. It's over, she whispered. He held her tighter. No, love, it's just beginning for us. The sun rose slowly over Lagos, casting golden light through the wide windows of Obina and Chica's new penthouse. But Chica wasn't admiring the view this morning. She was pacing, a white folder clutched in her hand. Nervous? Yes. Excited? Absolutely. She turned when Obina stepped out of their bedroom, still pulling on his watch. You're going to be amazing, he said without even asking what she was anxious about. Chica laughed softly, shaking her head. Do I look that worried? You look like you're about to walk into a boardroom and flip a table, he teased, pulling her into his arms. What's in the folder? She handed it to him. He flipped through it. His brow lifted. A proposal. For a women's vocational foundation? Not just women, she said. Single mothers. Girls who had to drop out of school. Secretaries like me, who were overlooked until someone gave them a chance. Obina blinked, moved. You're really doing this? She nodded. I want to. It's time I stop hiding behind your name. 2 weeks later, the launch. The hall in Ikoyi was filled with women of all ages, seated in rows, some holding babies, some holding dreams. Chica stood at the podium, radiant in a deep blue gown. Cameras flashed. Journalists murmured. But Chica's eyes only sought one face. Obina, standing quietly in the back, smiling like the proudest man in the world. She took a deep breath. My name is Chica Ease, formerly a secretary, now CEO's wife. But more importantly, I'm a woman who understands what it means to be underestimated. Today, we launch Light Within Foundation because I believe greatness doesn't only sit behind mahogany desks. Sometimes it waits at the receptionist's table. The room erupted in applause. Later that night, Obina watched her move through the room, shaking hands with donors and sharing hugs with young women who looked at her with awe. She was glowing not with wealth but with purpose. You've become a star, he whispered in her ear when she finally returned to his side. She turned to him with a smile that melted him every time. No, I've just finally seen the light within me. The early morning calm of Obina and Chica's home was shattered by the sharp ding of Chica's phone. She stretched, still half asleep, and reached for it. Unknown number. You really think you're safe now? Ask your husband who Clara is before you go building empires on lies. Her heart skipped. Clara? The name was unfamiliar, yet it dripped with something venomous. Something designed to pierce her peace. Obina was brushing his teeth when she walked in with the phone. Who is Clara? He paused, toothbrush halfway to his mouth. Clara? Don't lie. He rinsed, wiped his face, and leaned against the counter. Clara Asica. She was someone I dated. A long time ago, before I ever met you. Chica crossed her arms, waiting. She left me. For someone richer at the time. It ended badly. I hadn't heard from her in over 6 years. Chica showed him the message. He stared at it, brows furrowed. What's she playing at now? That afternoon, Obina's office. His assistant knocked. Sir, a woman is here. Says she's from Royal Hope Holdings. Her name is Clara Asica. Obina froze. Tell her I'm not available. But Clara wasn't the type to wait for permission. She strode in, tall, elegant, and poisonous. Obina, she purred, it's been too long. He stood. What do you want? Clara placed a thick brown envelope on his desk. I want in. Obina frowned. In what? She smiled. Your wife's foundation, or it'll leak every photo, every chat. And the deal you once made in my name. Back at home. Chica opened the envelope, trembling. Inside were images. Old chats from a forgotten tablet. Voice notes of a young Obina desperately begging Clara not to leave. And worst. A loan contract. A real estate project from 10 years ago. Funded with Clara's help, and Obina's name forged to avoid exposure. You never told me about this, Chica whispered. I didn't think it mattered anymore, he said, defeated. But to her, it still does. Later that night, Chica sat alone in the living room, documents spread out. Betrayal clawed at her chest. Not because of Obina's past, but because she hadn't expected a ghost from it to come crashing into their present. Obina joined her quietly. I'll fix this. How? He exhaled. By not hiding anymore. The next day, press conference. With Chica beside him, Obina stepped before the cameras. I am Obina Ease, CEO of Legacy Estates. Years ago, I made mistakes, personal and professional. One of those involved accepting funds under a false name from someone I once trusted. That woman now seeks to use that against my wife and our foundation. Chica took the mic next. We will not allow blackmail to derail our purpose. This foundation stands for women rising from betrayal and hardship. And I will not be silenced by either. The room erupted in applause. Later that night, Chica and Obina lay on their bed, fingers intertwined. She came to destroy us, Chica said softly. Obina kissed her hand. But instead, she reminded us how strong we are. Together. The sun glowed above the newly constructed Women's Skill Center in Ajagunal, Lagos. Laughter, music, and the sounds of eager hands filled the air as dozens of young women, many with babies tied to their backs, registered for classes. This was it. The beginning. Chica stood at the gate, dressed in a simple Ankara gown, her hair wrapped beautifully, clipboard in hand. Volunteers scurried about, setting up tables and arranging supplies. Obina stood nearby in jeans and a white shirt, carrying boxes of donated sewing machines. The Billionaire CEO looked more like a humble logistics assistant, and he loved it. You're glowing, he said, watching her. I've never been this happy, Chica whispered. Later that morning, Chica stepped up to the microphone before the crowd. What you see today is not just a building. It is proof that pain can be repurposed, that betrayal can lead to brilliance, and that every woman deserves more than just survival. She deserves legacy. A tear slipped from the corner of Obina's eye. He wasn't proud just because of the center. He was proud because Chica had become more than a wife. She had become a force. 1 week later, their home. They sat on the floor of their living room, barefoot, eating suya and laughing over old memories. No board meetings, no threats, no scandals, Chica smiled. Just us. Obinna held her close. Just us. She leaned against him. I thought being your secretary was the highlight of my story. He kissed her temple. Turns out it was just the prologue. 2 years later, a newspaper lay on the center table of their home. Headline: Light Within Foundation expands to 5 states. CEO Chika is honored by United Nations for empowering African women. Beside it, a baby's soft coo echoed from the crib. Obinna walked in with a bottle, lifting their daughter, Neka, with a wide grin. She has your fire, he said, kissing Chika. And your stubbornness, Chika teased, watching their little girl grab the newspaper and drool on her mother's face. As the sun set outside their home, one thing was clear. Chika Ease was no longer just a secretary. She was a builder, a mother, a wife, a warrior. And together with Obinna, she had built more than wealth or buildings. They had built legacy.